everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Joelle and I resell on Poshmark, Depop, Mercari, and now WhatNot. And speaking of WhatNot, today's video is just a recap of my first week selling on the platform. I have 2 live shows that I'm going to talk about, so I'll just quickly discuss how many items I sold and what profits I made. And then I'm just gonna go over the pros and cons of the app, lessons that I've learned so far, and how I've been gaining traffic to my page. And this is from the perspective of a new seller. So hopefully this video will be helpful if you are thinking about applying to be a seller. Maybe you finished your onboarding and you're about to schedule your first live show, or if you're just curious about the app in general. So first up, we're going to talk about my first 2 shows. My first show was an activewear sale and I sold a total of 38 items. It was a sellout show, and I don't know about you, but I have never sold that many items in one day. So it was definitely a success. This was a risky show for me, however, because I put a lot of items in there that I paid up for. I typically pay no more than $1 to $2 per item when I'm thrifting, but I had a lot of Lululemon pieces, a couple of Aloe and Athleta pieces, and other great activewear brands that I put on the show. And these were items that I paid $4 to $8 for. So some of the items I started at right what I paid for, and then others I put for around $10 to $12 starting bid. My gross profits before WhatNot's fees and cost of goods were $238 for 38 items. And I ended up profiting $97.95. Now I know that is a huge difference between gross profit and actual earnings. I'm definitely not used to that, and it was a little frustrating when I first saw that number, but I just had to remind myself that this was my first show. I think I had anywhere between 10 to 20 people in the show at once. So I know as I continue to schedule more shows, they will continue to grow. This was just that first show that I had to get through. My second show that I did happened just 2 days ago, and I did a fall neutral show. I started my bids anywhere between $1 and $3, and I'm kind of regretting that because even though I profited overall on this show, there were still some individual items that I technically lost money on. For example, there were a few sweaters that I paid around $4 for, and they only sold for $3. So for that individual piece, I might have lost money, but overall I profited when I added everything together. For this show, I sold 30 items total, and there was definitely not as much traffic. I was trying to experiment with times. My first show was Saturday at 10 a.m. and this show was Tuesday at 4 p.m. And my gross profits were $114. My actual profits were terrible compared to that gross profit. I only ended up profiting $23.47 for this show. Following the show, when I was going through the numbers, it was so frustrating because I felt like I had a lot of great pieces, but I just had to remind myself that I am a beginner on WhatNot, and really whenever you try something new, you pretty much learn from trial and error. So I will continue to do my shows on Saturday mornings. I noticed a lot of traffic in my show and other people's shows. I think I'm gonna stay away from that mid-afternoon time. It's just an awkward time where people are maybe at school still or still at work, so I will try to stick to those morning or night times. Now that we've done just a quick recap of my first 2 shows, I am going to talk about the pros and cons that I have seen from WhatNot as a beginner seller. Spoiler alert, I'm going to continue selling on WhatNot. Despite the low profits that I've gotten, I definitely see the benefits of the app. So we're gonna start with the cons, and that first con is that as a new seller, you almost need your cost of goods to be low unless you're starting with higher bids. As a new seller, I chose to do low starting bids because I feel like that attracts both resellers and personal shoppers. I do understand though people who start their bids a little bit higher because it kind of gives you a little more assurance that even if you have one bidder, you're still gonna make a decent profit. Whereas I had items that I paid 98 cents for, and if I sold it for just $1, I would still end up losing about 50 cents. That leads me to my next con, which is that you do have a lot of lower profit sales. There are definitely some pieces, especially those Lululemon ones, that I could have sold for more on Poshmark, but I ended up getting just $10 to $15 on WhatNot. I was still okay with that quick money, but I was definitely hoping that some of the bids could have gotten a little bit higher, but that is the risk that you run when you are having a live auction. The final con definitely depends on how many followers you have on WhatNot. And that's that you do need to emphasize advertising your show, whether that be on WhatNot stories or on other social media platforms. It definitely benefits you to have a following. I know that I have seen a handful of resellers that are famous on YouTube that have shows with 100+ people. I'm definitely one of those people because I enjoy attending those shows. So it's definitely helpful to have a following, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, or another platform. But it's equally as important to stay active on the WhatNot app. definitely make sure that you attend other people's shows, whether you're just commenting on their stuff or you're actually purchasing. That is a great way to gain a following on the app. Now we're going to get into the pros of using the WhatNot app, and my biggest pro is that you get quick money. I know I talked about my Lululemon items and that I made less profit for a lot of them. Obviously, it was frustrating, but at the same time, making that quick money was huge. A couple months ago, I had a thrift haul with a lot of Lululemon items. I will link it below if you want to see what I got, but I listed them all the same day that I got them. I was really excited because I paid either $4.98 or $6.98 per item. So I was really anticipating a huge profit, but they've all been listed for a couple of months, and on Poshmark, they have not gotten a lot of likes. I did manage to sell one pair of leggings and I profited $32, which was a huge success, but these other ones just weren't moving. So even though I didn't make as much of a profit as I would on Poshmark, it was still so exciting to be able to sell all those pieces in one day on WhatNot. And I kind of have that same perspective when it comes to Plato's Closet. If you watch my channel, you know that I definitely enjoy selling clothes to Plato's Closet. I usually do it at least once a month, if not more. And it's because some items are just worth getting that quick flip, even if you're gonna make less of a profit. If you're getting all of those profits at once, they do add up, and making those quick flips and quick money can be very important as a reseller. My next pro is that you can move a ton of inventory at once, especially your death pile. I don't know about you all, but I have very large bins of unlisted inventory. For me, I spent the last month or so stocking up on inventory since I am in my law school semester now. So I definitely wanted to stock up so I didn't have to spend as much time thrifting during the semester. And as excited I was to have all of this inventory, it is now very overwhelming because I have so many items. And as I said earlier, for most of these items, I have spent $1 or less. So it is really easy to just put them on WhatNot and get that quick flip. So if you're overwhelmed with your unlisted inventory, I think WhatNot is the perfect app for you. I know for me, it was a huge relief to move out all of this inventory. My final pro of WhatNot is that you get the opportunity to connect with other resellers and shoppers. Obviously, there are benefits to connecting with other people. You can definitely gain a following, but I also think that it's just great to support other people's shows. I know I go to a lot of people's shows thinking that I'm not going to buy anything, but then I see the amazing inventory that they have or that they're starting at low bids, and so I choose to purchase from them. But from a beginner's perspective, I've definitely seen a lot of traffic to my own page by interacting with others. So if you are looking to gain your following on WhatNot, definitely make sure to interact with others. But overall, it is just great to support other people's shows. All right, now that we've gone over the pros and the cons of WhatNot, I'm just going to talk about lessons that I've learned in my first week on the platform. Now I have my little outline here. This is how I plan out my YouTube videos every week. Typically, it is just a condensed version of what I'm going to talk about, and then I elaborate on the video. But for lessons I've learned, I actually wrote out paragraphs, and they're like 2 or 3 sentences, so they're not too long, but I am actually going to read out the paragraphs. This first lesson applies to sellers who start their bids primarily at $1 to $2, which is what I did for my last show and what I plan on doing in the future. But this first lesson says, don't even think about putting in items that you paid more than $1 for if you want to make money. I lost so much money thinking certain pieces would sell for more. You can't rely on multiple bidders if you are a small and new page. Overall, you just don't know what your item's going to sell for, and if you are a small or a new page, you also don't know how many people are going to show up for your show. For example, for my first show, I had around 15 to 20 people in there at a time. But for my second show, I only had around 10 to 12 people. There were definitely some items that I paid around $3 to $4 for that I started at around 2 to 3. And I ended up losing money because I only had 1 or 2 bidders. So the biggest thing that I learned is to make sure that my cost of goods stay less than $1. I'm definitely going to focus on selling stuff that I thrifted for cheap, stuff that I received from people for free, or stuff from my own personal closet. My next lesson I also wrote out, it says, find silver linings. I lost money on a couple of items, but I still profited overall. There were so many thrifted failures that I got rid of, and I am just so happy to see them gone. So when I mentioned items that I paid $3 to $4 for and then I ended up losing money on, most of those were thrifted failures that had been listed on Poshmark and other platforms for way too long. So overall, it was just a relief to get those items out of my inventory. All right, now I'm going to talk about how I've been gaining traffic to my page. My biggest thing is supporting other people's shows and pages. When I first made my account, I wasn't really sure how to gain followers except putting my WhatNot on my social media pages. But one night I was watching a show and I was actually pretty interested in purchasing some items. I ended up just complimenting one of the pieces I was interested in, and all of a sudden I had 3 or 4 new followers. So since then, I've noticed that you don't even need to comment all the time. Even just joining a show, it does show up in the chat, will gain you a couple of followers. The next thing I've been doing to gain more traffic to my WhatNot is hosting giveaways. There is a setting that you can do when you're setting up your giveaway for your upcoming show, and you could do it where you require people who enter your giveaway to also follow you. It's super easy for the person that is entering because all they have to do is click the button that says follow and enter. I think that's a great feature that WhatNot has because it's super simple for both the buyer and the seller, and overall it's a great way to gain your following. My final thing I'm doing to gain traffic for WhatNot is to be active on other social media apps and talk about WhatNot. If you're not a part of it, I would highly recommend joining the WhatNot for Resellers Facebook page. I will link it below if you all want to join. My favorite part about this group is that you are actually allowed to advertise your page and your upcoming shows. So before each show that I have had this week, I have made sure to make a post on that Facebook page. And like we talked about earlier with connecting with other resellers, this is the perfect place to do so because you're able to advertise and also support other people's posts. Now, I'm also going to talk about what I am not doing to gain a following on WhatNot. I only have one thing, and it is mass following people. Now, I know there could be different opinions about this, but I know on Instagram, I did try to do this when I was selling clothes on there. I would find maybe a relevant hashtag and see who's following it, and I would just click through and follow people. It did manage to bring me a couple of sales, but overall it just brought a lot of non-engaging followers. So when I talk about gaining traffic to my page, I'm not just talking about followers, I am talking about followers who are going to be engaged in my WhatNot shows. So I definitely make sure to follow people back who follow me, but what I am not doing is mass following people. All right, we've gone over all of our pointers, so now I'm just going to discuss my overall view of WhatNot in my first week of selling. Even though my second show is disappointing, I am very happy with the app and I plan on continuing to sell. With my law school schedule, I've kind of had to neglect Poshmark. I still managed to have my best month of reselling, but this last week of August, I have only been able to list just a couple of items and I've been using one shop to relist items. But overall, I have not gained a lot of traffic to my Poshmark closet. Obviously, I am still going to sell on Poshmark. I will still make videos about Poshmark, and I will definitely make sure to fit it into my schedule. But this first week of law school, I have just been trying to get acquainted with my classes, and it has been consuming a lot of my time. So WhatNot has been the perfect way for me to make quick money and move out my inventory, and it definitely hasn't been time consuming, which is exactly what I need right now with my law school schedule. So again, overall, I'm really happy with WhatNot, and I'm definitely excited for my next show. If you want to check it out, it is Saturday, September 3rd at 10 a.m. And I'm pretty much just clearing out my unlisted inventory and starting my bids at $1 to $3. So if you want to check that out, that is also linked below. I'm sorry I'm adding so many links, but with WhatNot being new for clothing sellers, I definitely want to make sure to share as much information as possible below. But if you are still watching, I appreciate you so much for supporting my channel. And now that we're at the end of this video, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you for the next video.